In this video, we will discuss the relationship between the various segments pertaining to a circle, like radius, tangent, secant. We'll just discuss the relationships between these. The most important one that we're going to talk about is the fact that a radius and a tangent will always be perpendicular. All right, so if this is a radius, if this blue line I'm about to draw is a tangent line, that will only be true if this is a 90-degree angle. Now, in this particular problem, we are not told that this is a tangent line. Instead, we're supposed to determine if this blue segment is a tangent to the circle. Is it really a tangent? Well, if it's a tangent, then this should be a right angle, like I just said. So the question really comes down to, can I prove that this is a right angle? Well, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. This will only be a right triangle if the Pythagorean theorem holds. So we can ask ourselves, does 17 squared plus 12 squared equal 20 squared? In other words, does 289 plus 144 equal 400? Well, in other words, does 433 equal 400? Well, obviously not. So we will say no. So segment AB is not tangent. All right, how about this one? Again, we just can check the Pythagorean theorem. All right, so I feel like changing colors though. So we can say, does a squared plus b squared equal c squared? Okay, so in other words, does 49 plus 24 squared, you say, plus 576 equal, I forget what this is, 625. Oh, look, it does. Does 625 equal 625? Yes. So segment AB is tangent. Okay. What about this one, you guys? What about this one? Before we really get too far gone, we need to pause and ask ourselves, wait a minute. They didn't give us the length of this whole side of the triangle, but they did give us a radius. So if that's 45, then that means this must also be 45. And that means that the diameter, you know, this whole side of the triangle must be 90. Okay, so that's what we're going to check out. So the question is, does a squared plus b squared equal c squared? All right, is this true? No. All right, does this equal that? No, it didn't turn out to be equal, so that means that we will say no. So segment AB is not tangent. Okay, same thing for problem number 4. Watch out for the fact that the radius here, they didn't give it to us, but it's 8. All right, because this is 8 over here, and the radius is the same in all these directions. All right, which means that this side of the triangle, the would-be hypotenuse, is 17. Okay, so the question is, does a squared plus b squared equal c squared? In other words, does 64 plus 225 equal 289? Well, let's see. Oh, look at that. Does 289 equal 289? Yes, sir. So, therefore, segment AB is tangent. For the next few problems, we're supposed to assume that anything that looks like a tangent really is a tangent. So, for example, I see the question mark. We're supposed to find that, so I'm going to call it x. But we know that if this is a tangent, then it must be perpendicular to the radius, which makes this a right triangle, so that means I can use the Pythagorean theorem. If this radius is 20, that means that this is also 20 because this is also a radius of the circle. Okay, which means that the full length right here is actually 29. So keep that in mind as you do the Pythagorean theorem. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I'm going to say x squared plus 20 squared is equal to 29 squared. All right, so that's going to be x squared plus 400 is equal to 841. Subtract that 400 from both sides. So that's going to be 441. And then you want to take the square root of both sides. That's 21. Okay, number 6. If this radius is 15, that means this radius over here is also 15, which means that this side of the triangle is 30. 15 plus 15. So now I can do the Pythagorean theorem where I'm going to go ahead and find the hypotenuse in this case. So let's see. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So 16 squared plus 30 squared is equal to x squared. Okay, so I have all this. And then finally, to get x by itself, I need to take the square root of both sides. $34. Okay. For this next one, all right, we need to find out what this is right here. So I need to be careful because this x right here is not a side of the triangle. All right, it is just, it's half of the side of a triangle because this is the radius and it really goes in both directions. So that means I can't do x squared plus 7.8 squared is equal to 17.8 squared because I need the side of a triangle. So I'm going to do another variable. Okay, so the entire side of this triangle, I'm going to call that d because this is the diameter. So now I'm going to set up my Pythagorean theorem by doing diameter squared plus 7.8 squared is equal to 17.8 squared. Okay, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Show d squared plus 60.84 All right, so far so good. Let's subtract 60.84 from both sides. That's 256. And then I take the square root of both sides to get the d by itself. Whoa. And that is 16. Oh, that's not the final answer though. Oopsies. All right, let me not put a box around that. Maybe I'll put like a circle around it, but not a box. All right, because we're supposed to be finding x. X is half of the diameter because it's the radius. So let's go back and say, therefore, x is equal to 8. And that's the final answer. Okay, we had to divide by 2. All right, now we can go on to number 8. Okay, so same type of deal, We are supposed to find this little piece out here. And we know that this piece right here is 9. Okay, we know that. So, and that means that the hypotenuse, okay, because I need an entire side of a triangle, is going to be x plus 9. So when I do my Pythagorean theorem, leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. That means 9 squared plus 12 squared is equal to x plus 9 squared. Interesting. So this is going to give me 81 plus 144 equals. Now be careful. A lot of students don't know how to square a binomial, a two-piece. You can't just do x squared plus 81. That's wrong. Squaring something means multiplying by itself. So x plus 9 squared means x plus 9 times x plus 9. Okay, and the way you multiply a binomial times a binomial is you do this double distributive property. So first I'm going to distribute the x. So x times x, that's x squared. X times 9, that's 9x. And now I'm going to distribute the 9. 9 times x, it's another 9x. 9 times 9, that's 81. All right, while we're at it, let's add 81 plus 144. $225. So the x squared plus 18x plus 81. Because I have two different kinds of x, I have x squared and a regular x. I can't just get x by itself. Instead, I need to get 0 on one side, and then I can either factor or use something called the quadratic formula. Okay, so I've subtracted 225 from both sides, and I got this. So now it's time to use the quadratic formula, which goes like this. When you have an equation in this form, the quadratic formula says that the solution will be the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You will learn about this more in a later lesson, but it's good to get a little bit of a preview. So what are all these a's, b's, and c's? They are the coefficients of this polynomial. So in front of this x squared, there's an invisible 1. So that's like my a. My b is this 18, and my c is the negative 144. So in other words, this is a, this is b, and this is c right there. So I'm just going to substitute those numbers in. Maybe I'll write this off to the side real quick. So a is 1, b is 18, and c is negative 144. So I'm going to substitute those into this formula. So that tells me that x is going to equal the opposite of b. So that's negative 18 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's 18 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 144, all over 2a. So that's just 2 times 1. So all I have to do is simplify this down, and that will be my answer. Now, I always like to start by calculating the part under the radical first. So I'm just going to leave this negative 18 plus or minus the square root. All right, 2 times 1 is just 2. So I'm about to just calculate this part. All right, I'm basically putting that in my calculator right now. So if I do that, just without the radical, just the part underneath the radical, that's going to be 18 squared minus 4. All right, I don't really need to put the 1. I'll just go ahead and put it just this once, minus 144. Did I show that? Notice that this minus sign that I just put in front of the 144 is different. Okay, it's different than this minus sign in the middle. When you have a minus sign just in the front of a number, you have to use this little white one down here. It's like a negative sign. Anyway, boom. So I'm getting 900. So that is the number under the radical. It's called the discriminant. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that right now. And it's under the radical. So that means I'm going to take the square root, obviously. So I'll have x equals negative 18 plus or minus. And let's see, I got to do the square root of 900 is 30. So this will be plus or minus 30 over 2. Now, what does this mean? Plus or minus means that we're going to have two different answers. Okay, so if I sort of separate this out, you know what, let me just do it horizontally. So I'm going to separate this into two different answers. So it will be negative 18 plus 30 over 2, or negative 18 minus 30 over 2. That's the plus or minus, all right, just split up into two different expressions. So that means that x is equal to, let's see, well, negative 18 plus 30 all right, that's 12. So that's 12 over 2, or that's going to be negative 48 over 2. All right, both of these numbers are divisible by 2, so that means x is equal to 6, or negative 24. So if we were just solving an equation, these would be the two solutions. Okay, however, this is a geometric problem. X represents something. It represents the length of this little piece I'm going to color in purple right now. All right, X represents that length. Can you have a negative length? No. A length can only be positive. So that means that this negative version is extraneous. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so technically that's the word we use when you get a solution that doesn't actually make sense. It doesn't actually work. So x equals 6 is actually going to be the only real answer. Okay, so that's it. X equals 6. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. Go ahead and click here in the red apple to watch the next video. Click in the green apple to subscribe, or click the yellow apple for the full playlist.